Oh, no worries. It's been a long time, and I tell you, we've been pretty busy on our side. So apologies for not making the regular VUC conference. I've missed you guys.
We've missed you.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. I think on that last episode we probably talked about kind of the pivot away from Twelephone into what we were affectionately calling Skynet back in those days, skynet.im.
Right.
Right? Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, so Twelephone, we had looked at it from a business perspective. I had a couple of angel investors that we were talking. I quit my job because I said that this could be the next big thing, and we started looking at business models and what could we do with Twelephone, and at that point in time, every WebRTC service was free. And we had some ideas maybe around enterprise customer support and what have you that sounded kind of interesting, but I was playing with the whole Skynet IM back in the last quarter of 2013, and we kind of talked about really the what the analysts were starting to say about IoT, which was all over the board. Anywhere they're saying, and like by 2020 they were saying it was going to be either a $3 trillion market or a what was it, or 14 trillion, 3 to 14 trillion dollar market by 2020. So we said, well, there's got to be some ways to monetize Skynet there. So we did the pivot, and really glad that we did, because we ended up bringing on, I think in the early days, maybe 3 or 4 people full time. The kind of the sad part of the story is the money guys made us change the name. So they said no one will ever buy Skynet for their enterprise. No one will allow you to put Skynet into their company. So and I think that there was some fear of being sued by, although I thought that would have been the best part of the story. So we changed the name from Skynet.im to Octoblu. I see Tim's laughing back there.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's
so
better
we
than
changed it to Octoblu.
it's better than Snowden networks.
I saw that Citizen 4 last night. I'm telling you, I'm so glad that we've added encryption to the payloads and everything in Octoblu, because I think we need to get. There's a lot going on there that it reminds you about there, right?
But you're not yet talking with a
Snowden
towel
network.
over your head, Chris.
No,
I saw
I'm
that too.
living
It's a
out.
terrific movie.
I'm living out in the public, man. I want to face this stuff head on and see what we can all do to keep making this everything more secure. And Tim's got some great ideas too around the next generation of the internet. Peer to peer. I'm believing in his ideas even more and more after that movie. Hope I didn't let
There
any
was
cats out of the bag, Tim. But
there was a
I love that story.
I think that was a cue for you, Tim. But if you don't have anything to say, that's
Yeah,
fine.
no, it's not got to a point where I can do anything with it apart from do PowerPoint slides. So it needs to be a bit more real, and I don't have the time for that at the moment, sadly.
I think the timing is getting more and more right every day, so you need to keep thinking through that.
That's actually
Cool.
a very good point, Chris. In that the two worries. I mean, you're talking about all these little devices that are connected to your home network, and how if somebody gets in, they could pretty much assassinate you with various moves, like turning your furnace all the way up. I mean, not literally, but there are so many things that could be possible. And if you've ever seen the movie, the TV series Person of Interest, by any chance, you know anything about that?
Yep, a couple of episodes. Yep.
So, I mean, even if you don't follow the story, the opening sequence is perfect, because I've actually seen what they were showing. I mean, I didn't realize that stuff actually exists, where you have the little square around the person and it can follow the person around. And even in Hangouts, they've got that recognition going. It doesn't work as well as it does on Person of Interest, but all of the Bluetooth hijacks and stuff like that they're doing. In fact, I always laughed at that and thought, yeah, well, this is kind of it's an extension of current technology, but apparently it's actually not an extension. It's happening every day. So that's interesting. And if you have a bunch of stuff around your house, it's scarier.
I was going to say, I think it wasn't just like 3 months ago. There was news about the Samsung TV was streaming all of your audio into the cloud. They were trying to make it passive type speech rec to do things locally. But yeah, that was a great eavesdropping device.
Well, if you go a little bit further to today's appliances that you have today in your house, like your television, your Wi-Fi, and all of these, they never got patched for two of the biggest bugs that were announced 3 months ago. So at the moment, you can have a virus running in there doing Bitcoin or even worse things.
Yeah, did you see that one of the news reports this week was they tracked down one of the major sources of spam on a particular botnet, and some guy's fridge had been hacked and was one of the major sources of email spam. I just it's exactly what you're saying. It's sitting there. Nobody looks at whether its CPU usage is 40% higher. Nobody notices it's anything about it. It's not been patched since it was shipped a year ago, and never will be, probably.
Well,
and it's running some buggy version of the Linux kernel with some cruddy BusyBox, and it's probably got a free backdoor for maintenance anyway. I mean, and I think Chris is absolutely right. I'm coming back to the topic. Chris is absolutely right that the security thing is for Internet of Things is essential. I mean, I don't want to be rude about them because they were lovely and it's a great device and it's only a toy and whatever. The Parrot drones, the security on them is hysterical. I mean, literally, we were discussing this in the pub the other night, that it wouldn't be difficult to write a Parrot drone which would go and fly and steal the others, make them flock after it, because there is literally no security.
There's a Skyjack open source project that does exactly that. You could fly a Parrot drone and basically hijack the connection and have it follow your drone away from the operator.
So what we launched at Ubuntu in the beginning of the year is exactly targeting what you guys are talking about. So we have a new IoT open source version that exactly gets patched to this type of problem. So we hope that in the future your fridge and your Wi-Fi point and all the other things don't have this type of problems anymore. Didn't want to.
So that coming full circle, I think that's important, Martin, because I can talk a little bit more too about the whole Octoblu stack, because there's probably 80% of it's open source as well, and there's a lot of security. Security's baked into the architecture itself. However, kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, is that our mission is just to machine-to-machine instant messaging, connect everything to everything, and allow you to automate these types of flows to simplify your life. But the manufacturer's devices are just that. I mean, you're even though you're connecting them and you're moving secure messages back and forth, if there's a vulnerability in the device itself, there's nothing that your platform, our platform, anyone's platform is going to be able to solve, right?
Well, yes. Well, if there's an app on there that is bad, we try to contain it, and the operating system we can manage. But of course, there's limits to everything. But that's where we would transactionally upgrade things if there's bugs in it.
So I'm thinking things like Belkin Wemos. I mean, some of the way those operating systems work are on those things is they're different for every single one of them. Their security strategies are different. Their protocols supported are different. Oftentimes, security is really the last, an afterthought. How a lot of these home automation devices work.
Yeah. So that's exactly where we have focused. And I don't want this to be a publicity thing, but we open sourced Snappy Ubuntu Core that can put mobile apps type of things with mobile app type of app stores onto anything, and those apps traditionally are written by bad programmers or hostile programmers. So we took that technology from our phone and now made it work into anything. So you are containing those apps so that even if they have problems, they cannot harm the base system or other apps. And the way you make apps is easy. But it is a problem, and we're trying to fix it now. That doesn't fix all Internet of Things, unfortunately, but that part of the puzzle, I think, is getting closer to be resolved.
That's cool.
I mean, I think we're in the point, and Chris is kind of leading the charge on this, and amongst others, we're at the point where we're starting to learn what this new landscape is going to look like. And you know, hopefully we can avoid making all of the obvious mistakes. We're going to make some mistakes, and some of them are already shipped. So the problem is that your mistakes live for an extremely long time in this world. You know, I can't think of the last time I replaced my fridge. It's 20 years. So you know, it's not. I mean, at least my PCs die within about 5 years. But the fridges are going to hang around, and I've upgraded the OS on them. You know, so there's a set of problems around that I think are really interesting. And I think the other thing that Chris and I have talked about a lot in the past, and maybe not enough recently, is about how it's not the same security paradigm. It's the, you know, we're not. I don't want a password for my fridge. I don't want to access my. I don't want to be given permission to use my fridge. That's the wrong. It's the wrong way. It's anthropologically the wrong way to look at it. It's my damn fridge. You know, I paid for it. Once I paid for it, the transaction, and I give it electricity. It's like it's mine at this point. And so I think we need to, those sorts of ideas. There's a whole lot of new stuff we need to do in this space, and just inheriting our mindset from other device spaces, particularly the desktop, I think is wrong. I like the idea of taking stuff from the mobile because people are very possessive about their mobiles. So something that's heading in the right direction. But you know, I don't know if any of you remember Hermione Way, but she's working publicity for somebody who has a Wi-Fi connected bed, and it's just like, you can't get more mine than my damn bed, you know. So I think we need to, you know, we really need to put a lot of thought into this, and I'm delighted that, you know, particularly you two are involved in this. And I see Ola's on the call but silent, or maybe he's just sent a bot instead.
Yeah, Tim, I was going to add to that. So I mean, while home automation mobile is very personal, as you point out, if you think about like how the enterprise workspace is moving in IoT as well as industrial. Now you've got millions of these types of sensors, maybe on a construction project, and you potentially have life threats, you know, or safety concerns if any of these things go awry, right? So, you know, if someone's walking, you know, man against machine, and the sensors, you know, aren't reporting correctly, I mean, you could have safety issues, you know, in a larger industrial situation too.
You don't have to go industrial. If you just connect an intelligent light at home and there's a bug and somebody can put it on 10,000 times a second, probably the light bulb can explode and provoke a fire. Like it's not that far, and I think in 2015 or 16 there will be a company that will be unfortunately known as the first that provoked that through IoT.
And we're going to avoid hopefully.
I was going to say, take a look at the bulbs. I mean, that's a really good analogy, like the Philips Hue bulb. So the way Octoblu attaches to it, we don't use the Philips Hue cloud. We speak, you know, Hue protocols. We speak lots of protocols, and we have an IoT, open source IoT cloud that you can put on a Raspberry Pi in your home. We have a gateway that you can tie all these things into that's open source. So you potentially someone could be accessing that bulb either through Octoblu, if they have the right permissions, or through the Philips Hue cloud as well with the right permissions. So I think there's lots of different ways to get to these devices that, they're, call it a backdoor, if you will, but I mean, it's kind of back to that initial discussion that it's pretty difficult to secure all angles of these devices because I mean, we're obviously focusing on Octoblu and have no control over any other access point to that bulb.
Yep. Now, what do you think? So one of the nicer aspects of IoT is actually what can you do with it that is interesting. So what we showed last week on Mobile World Congress is like if you put apps onto anything, you can make the stupidest thing the smartest thing. So we had a switch that basically was just the cheapest x86 with 6 ports we could find on Amazon. And by putting apps on there, we converted it in a robot controller, an IoT device doing lots of stuff. It all of a sudden was all join enabled, could talk to your fridge and your television. It could talk directly to the cloud. It could do lots of things in addition to being a firewall, had some F5 software, and was an actual switch. What do you think would be the killer apps for IoT and both home as well as as well as enterprise?
So that's a really good question. Yeah, so we were at Barcelona Mobile World Congress 2 in the Intel makerspace. We're approaching this thing from kind of I guess I was calling it an Internet of Everything type play, but the CEO of Citrix, we were just recently acquired by Citrix, I think has a better label for it. He's calling it the integration of everything. What's interesting about that is we're connecting smart things, wearables, people, and APIs. So you can kind of take an IFT approach into Octoblu as well, and you can connect systems. So something happens on Salesforce. I mean, maybe it's an agent makes a sale. Maybe you could turn a little siren on over the cube that made the sale, some applause on the overheads, and maybe text the manager, let him or her know that Cube 39 just closed $1,000 sale or something. So, or just even without IoT, I think there's interesting use cases that people are using Octoblu for, just connecting systems. So we have this designer, and maybe I could share my screen in a little while and kind of show it, but we have this designer where you can orchestrate all of these various systems and things and wearables like all together, sensor streaming that do different things, like if your heart rate, maybe if your heart rate and your glucose and your whatever healthcare monitoring things happen at the same time, we're feeding all that data to Splunk. Maybe Splunk could be doing some analysis looking for maybe your heart rate by alone may not be worth getting your doctor involved, but if you start attaching all these other sensors, maybe that combination of metrics is a concern. So then maybe it can fire up a GoToMeeting and bring your 2 or 3 doctors that are working on those specific parts of your system together to have a consultation with you or something. I think it's getting interesting just connecting either just systems or things in systems or sensors streaming in and doing more big data analytics. And by no means have we given enough focus on the machine learning side. That's kind of the next thing that I'm really interested in seeing, the predictability or the prediction. How do we make our lives easier? I think is are safer or better. I think that's the whole next thing that's getting really interesting.
Talking about that, like, what would you think? Because like technically, we are very close to be able to demonstrate this case where like you would wear anything that has your heartbeat measured and shared with like some home hub or whatever, and that home hub being connected to the house. So you come home and it says like, oh, Martin is stressed and he just came home. What do I do? Do I ask the Nest to make it warmer or colder? Do I want an espresso machine to make tea or coffee? Do I want to have this stereo play classical or rock music? And what effect does this have? So that over time, your house knows if you're stressed, it can calm you down doing these 5 actions, and it gets immediate feedback without you pushing buttons. Is this the type of thing you're referring to, or?
Yep. So exactly. So they say we have 1.9 billion connected devices today. I'm going over, like, I don't know, Forrester or Gartner or something I saw recently, and then they said in 5 years we're going to have 50 billion connected devices. So I don't know about you, but I can't deal with the ones like manually supervising the ones I have today. So to your point, they have to get smarter. You know, the Belkin Wemo light switch needs to be able to talk to my Philips Hue light bulbs and disrupt that whole app per, 1 app per device needs to go away, and all these devices need to get smarter.
But do you guys have any? I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead. I thought you were going to. Well, I was just going to say,
well,
do any of you?
Go ahead.
Finish what. I'm sorry. Finish what you're going to say, and then I have something I want to interject that's important. Go ahead.
So I spoke at SplunkConf. I think it's been about 3 months since that conference. And one interesting thing was I took so we have a gateway that you can have in your home, but we also have a mobile gateway that lets you stream all your BLE wearable devices, from a mobile device. So I had a heart rate monitor on, and I was streaming my heart rate through Octoblu, and then ultimately through into Splunk. And Splunk was watching my heart rate, and it had some saved queries that was running in real time that had we were looking at the Splunk dashboard, and it had green, thresholds for my heart rate, green, yellow, orange, red, whatever. And as Splunk was seeing I started doing jumping jacks. As Splunk started seeing my heart rate change, it was making decisions in the platform and injecting control into an Octoblu flow to change the lights in the conference room the same color as the gauges on the Splunk dashboard. So I think that was kind of a baby step into this. What can you have, the intelligence of a big data analytics engine do its thing, looking for trends and anomalies and doing what it does best, but giving it control to inject itself back in the flow where maybe it's automating simple things in our lives without us, having to tell things what to do.
I'm actually working on that exact system.
Awesome.
So basically, it's interesting because we're actually doing it from. This is an industrial place. So basically, for the past year, when we started ping things, the idea was to take machine learning, predictive analytics, and bring it to bear against something that hadn't, to be very honest, is an extremely, in some ways, archaic scenario, which is the power grid. So we're actually working with the bulk power system now and taking in some super high fidelity sensors that have been deployed in the past 5 years, what are called synchrophasers. And those particular sensors sample somewhere between 30, 60, all the way up to 120 samples a second. And we're basically analyzing the grid on the transmission side of life, not the distribution, not what most people are used to in regards to the poles behind their house with a transformer on it, but literally on the transmission side, and taking a look at the behavior of what these sensors are picking up, and then basically starting to make control automation decisions based on anomaly detection. Great example of, we're seeing certain events transpire in the real-time stream. What can we do to change things? Ultimately, this is an IoT player because this is the very first time that the grid has actually had, the power grid has actually had a wide area situational awareness. Never existed before, which is kind of scary to think about in the first place. But the idea here at some point is that we're going to go all the way across to the firewall. I mean, right now, the smartest thing that on the grid, or the one that's been recently deployed beyond the synchrophasers, were smart meters. So smart meter saturation in North America is fairly high in certain areas, almost 100% in California at this point. The problem is they don't sample very quickly. They're only used for a very small amount of functionality. Those smart meters are basically sampled once every 15 minutes. They're only used for billing purposes for the most part, and you didn't pay your bill, you're going to get shut off. I don't got to roll a truck. Somebody doesn't have to go behind the house and pull the plug. Okay, so that's the only way they're using it today, but there's a vast amount of data in there, including real-time pricing in those smart meters. So at some point, you're going to see the Nests of the world. You're going to see all the hubs that are going to go into houses. these things are going to even have the things that I'm talking about called synchrophasers inside of them, so that we actually literally have end-to-end awareness of what's transpiring on the power grid. Without the power grid, so you got no IoT. Okay, so I thought it was an interesting way to kind of enter the market and kind of take IoT from a different perspective. And actually, this is a stranger one. The first use case we're actually working on is basically identifying, and this again with machine learning, predictive analytics, is basically identifying geomagnetic disruption and its potential impact against the grid. So we're actually taking data directly out of satellites around the solar observatories, including USGS magnetometers, and basically looking for these signals of anomalies in the power system before they completely destroy transformers. So anyways, that's it's a completely different look at it, but
no, I think that's absolutely the right sort of place where when the question was where's the what's the killer app, where's the money, and I think it is in that sort of thing. It's in the ability to do mass peak shaving, to do and also to collect data from one place and use it in another. I mean, you're saying that you've got this huge network of grid, information. Well, actually, that tells you a whole lot of stuff that other people would be interested in. Like, you've effectively got a whole lot of wind and rain data that the grid keeps to itself. But I'm sure there are farmers and water management companies who would be delighted to be able to know that it's raining now 100 miles upstream, and I can start working my dams now, because I know what's coming. Or a farmer, hey, I'm not going to irrigate this field today because I know there's a rain cloud coming in an hour and a half's time, and I pick that out from the grid. And I think there's a huge amount of that data that can cross-reference like that in ways that are totally unexpected. I mean, those ones are kind of reasonably predictable, but there's a lot of fun stuff you could do with. I talked to a telco who I won't name, but they have a huge amount of rain fade data about their microwave links. And again, the farmers would love to have this, but there's no convenient way of publishing it. But you stick it all on Octoblu or some other network and make it available and charge some nominal fee for it, because it doesn't cost you anything. You're going to collect it anyway. And I think that's really interesting, and there's real money in those kinds of savings.
So I just shared my screen. This is kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where you can take. We've got this designer where you can go through any API that we support. And weather, like to Tim's point, is definitely one of them. Stock market's another one. And all of these devices, so I could say, let's check the weather, every second or every hour or every day, and decide whether or not to turn my the sprinklers on or something, in the yards, to conserve money. Or maybe a smart city example, maybe it's looking for traffic conditions, before it changes things with rerouting of traffic or lights, etc. But you literally just drag and drop, create these things. So this particular flow is looking for here. Let's make this a little bit more relevant. We'll look for tweets about the VUC. And
ooh, that's interesting. I hope you have a sentiment analysis there.
Yeah, and we got some sentiment. So we're saying, basically it's going to create a score based on the tweets, and if the score is greater than 0, so we're just adding up the words, then we're going to turn lights in my office green. Or bad, we're going to turn them red, or neutral, we'll turn them blue. But this is cool. So if you take, as you're building out this flow, we basically create this compute engine, this JavaScript representation of hang on here, this JavaScript representation here of which nodes connect to which nodes and the conditionals and the evaluation. And when we deploy that, we hit this deploy button here. That spins up a Docker instance. Gosh, that was like 2 seconds. That spun up a secure Docker instance in Amazon, and loaded that compute engine. So now this is running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and now we're able to watch tweets, or I'm able to turn my lights different colors based on what people are saying about the VUC.
Extremely useful.
Yeah, I think I think I would like to speak to you offline because I also have some nice things that could make this picture even better. So.
Oh, you've got. Yeah, I'm all ears. But let's look. Here's a good reference, like Tesla. We had. So watch this. So we had. Let me create a new flow. Our CEO has a Tesla, and he insisted that we add the Tesla API to this. So if we come down and we say, okay, let's add. I think I have one here. Let's see. Yeah, here. So let's add a Tesla node. Let's check its battery levels. So it gets current temperature. Where's the battery? It gets state of charge. We can add this. So here's all of our node operators. So we can say, okay, add this interval thing. So we'll say, or maybe schedule rather than every hour. Let's check the battery. And he wrote this flow himself, which I was pretty impressed. Like you could say. This is cron, so I can't remember the format here, but maybe it's like every night it's midnight or something. However this works, you could say call the Tesla API, add a conditional, say if the battery level is less than 50%, send me a text message to remind me to plug it in.
Yeah, I got a better one, Chris. Now add another. Take something like Tendril, which is open API about current power costs at your individual house from a smart meter's perspective. So now basically make it intelligent enough so that it understands that you're going to plug in and charge that battery when it's the lowest cost to you, right? And this is a huge implication for the power grid, because what's happening is that the amount of Teslas, Nissan Leafs, all the hybrids that are coming in, or straight battery operated EVs, combined with things like what they call demand generation, demand response. Demand generation being photovoltaics going onto rooftops, wind power being generated both on larger farms as well as individual wind. This is causing great problems for the grid. The grid was never meant to take power in the opposite, basically coming from a house going outwards. So anytime we can get more intelligent specifically about these end devices, specifically things like Teslas, et cetera, beyond just the raw cost of charging the battery up on the Tesla, you're basically could be sending messaging back to the grid itself to tell them that, listen, I am potentially going to be arriving at my house in 6.5 hours, and I am going to plug in my Tesla. And if you look at it holistically, like within your neighborhood, they start to get a better understanding what the load's going to start looking like, because they have to align generation with load. So,
yep, I think
it's fascinating how this blends together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a killer app in the near term. I saw a great article about recommending that Tesla should consider selling their battery arrays to homes. I think for just that, for like storage and off-peak and on-peak, better utilization of power.
Well, they've actually announced that business. They're actually doing it.
That's awesome.
But one of the things when people go and like, what is an IoT app? I always give a cruel example, but everybody seems to get it. If you have like a scale at home, you have a Fitbit, and you have a smart lock. Well, if you want to lose weight, put that smart lock onto your fridge, and your fridge will not open until you stand on your scale. If your weight is worse than yesterday, it only opens for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or until you get to your next Fitbit goal. People seem to get it. It's cruel, but it does the job.
Well, they're going to do that to James' vodka bottle.
So we were having fun in Barcelona. We took the Mayo and connected it to drones. I think I was calling this the killer drone demo. But you were able to fly a parody R drone with your Mayo without any programming. So I mean, I think really it's a matter of just loading up this experience of Octoblu with as many different devices and APIs as you can, and then let everyone else have the creative ideas how to best
and this
solve problems.
this is where I think I can give you millions of different classes of devices because we are able to put apps on almost anything that can have an ARM v7, v8, or Intel processor.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I think we should talk together because I think this is a killer combination.
It sounds awesome to me.
So the funny thing is, this reminds me very much of where this community started with Asterisk. Asterisk being the Swiss Army knife, plug anything to anything device. You could take a bunch of analog faxes and plug them into a PRI and plug a Grandstream and all this stuff, and then you'd put a bit of code in Asterisk and it would make them interoperate, and you could put a doorbell and whatever else into it. So I think what Chris is doing, and to an extent some of the rest of the the IoT crowd are doing, is recreating that sort of plug and play thing that Asterisk did, only for all the rest of the things in our houses that aren't phones. And that leads me to a question which actually Neil Stratford prompted me to ask about where do we think voice fits into this? Like, we haven't talked about any of these things being voice controlled. Is that something that anybody actually wants? Do they want to shout at their fridge or not? I'm actually really ambivalent about this.
So look at this this flow I have here. This has a voice component in it. We built this in I think about 30 minutes. But someone at Citrix was wondering, could we make the conference room a little bit more intelligent than it is? So Citrix has the same problem that everyone else does. 10 minutes before a meeting starts, you're fumbling with the phone number to dial. You're fumbling with getting the video up on the display, and etc. So what we did was we put an iBeacon in a conference room. When you walk into the conference room, it says, "Oh, it's Chris. Does Chris have any meetings in here?" It can call the GoToMeeting API, and if I do, it could go ahead and start the meeting for me automatically. We just added a Chromecast node, so it could now throw my tab up on the display for me automatically. Start the meeting, and then start the call recording. And at the end of the meeting, it could upload the audio recording to share file, and then send an email to all the participants with the link of the call. I mean, if it had the dictation capabilities, it could do the minutes with active speaker. So I very much think that voice should be a part of this discussion.
I wanted to mention something earlier, and I didn't get a chance to stick this in, but I started with you guys, and what I was going to say is that all of you here know a lot about this stuff and have done demos. Tim did a drone type, it wasn't a drone, I guess, car demo, driving something at a distance, and this is all very impressive, but at the moment the technology really is in its infancy. And for example, I won an LG G Watch. So it connects to my phone, right? And about every 3 or 4 days I have to reboot the phone because it stops talking. Now, you may well say, well, this is a bug in the phone, or it's a bug in the device, or it's a bug in Android Wear, or whatever that may be. But the fact is, getting back to the great example from Tim of a refrigerator, I don't want my refrigerator to talk to anybody, not even me. I don't care. What possible gain could there be in a refrigerator doing anything? I realize that some people think, well, it could tell you, but you're low on milk. I mean, we're human beings. Thank you. We're human beings. What would be the point of life? What are you going to do when all this time of thinking about the serendipity of, okay, we're out of milk, so I got to do something. I have to cook something that doesn't require cream or what. I mean, there's a point where the burden to benefit, or benefit to burden, I should say, is lost. So this is all theoretical. And we love this stuff, all of us. Go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say I completely agree with you. I think that the idea of my fridge knowing what's in it is useless. The only thing I want from my fridge is I want it to remind me that there's a service interval. Perhaps. I want it to tell me if it's got a malfunction, and I might like it to buy electricity cheaply on my behalf. So if, for example, I've got a pile of solar panels and I'm powering my Tesla battery with those solar panels, and the grid is at a certain price, and my fridge is thinking, well, you know, at some point in the next half hour I'm going to have to do a cooling cycle. I wouldn't mind if it was smart about that. If it cooled itself down an extra degree or two when electricity was cheap, because it knows that I never open the door at night. That sort of thing, you know, if it can make a 10% saving on my electricity bill, then actually I don't care about that from my perspective. But as far as the planet's concerned, there's a shitload of those, excuse my French, optimizations that we can do and get down to you know, significantly less power consumption by me personally losing nothing from it.
But it doesn't have to tell you on the internet, for goodness sake, that it needs maintenance. It could just
it does. And it does actually. Let me just finish that one, which is it does have to talk on the internet, because I don't want to have to buy my solar panels from the same manufacturer as I have to buy my fridge, as I buy my car, as I buy my battery. The only way that scenario works for me is if I can buy them independently, and for that to happen, you have to have some external thing like an internet that they can all talk over with shared protocols. Unless that happens, I'm tied into the Apple fridge with the Apple car and the Apple.
What a horrible idea.
Yeah. So the point I wanted to ask here is like, what if you could just personalize it? Like the thing that we worked on is like apps on anything. So it's like your phone is different than my phone. So it's not because you don't like it that somebody else might not like it. I might like that my vacuum cleaner talks to my alarm, so that it only comes and cleans when I'm not there, and doesn't drive over the kids and doesn't trip off the alarm, or that my microwave doesn't have to be programmed when I put something in it that has a smart label and already knows how to cook that thing. But it doesn't have to be that like you all get it or you don't get it. Like what's possible now is to say like, okay, I can decide to what level I want intelligence in this device, because software is defining now most of the usability of devices, and it will only go a lot further. So it will be about what you want it to be, not what the manufacturer or the walled garden that sold it to you wants it to be.
Do you remember watching the Jetsons when we were all kids? Well, at least I was a kid when the Jetsons were on.
I was already an adult.
They had plenty of time to get into trouble, right? I mean, like everything, like the food was cooked, Martin, like you just explained. You know, that'll pop out and robots and stuff, and they had plenty of time to live. You know, just didn't have to worry about all the little things.
I really think we have to stop wondering about the internet, what's on the net or not the net. Everything is the internet. The question is, how do we make kind of security realms on top of this network that everything is connecting to? But so not on the net or on the net. Everything will be the internet. And the internet will reach your house and reach you over many different networks at the same time. So we have to rethink the design here. There's not a home that has one connection to the net, and there's an inside and outside. Stop that. It's all the internet.
So
we need to rethink the network design here.
Well, I think the way we approach this with Octoblu, the actual IoT open source IoT platform that Octoblu runs on is called MeshBlue. It's on GitHub. It's an MIT license, but it's at the core. It's a mesh network. You don't need internet at all to run it. So you could have everything in your home just connected and talking locally, but you could connect MeshBlue up to the public Octoblu cloud, and then that's how you can get internet connectivity into it. I think take a construction project. You could put lots of little MeshBlue nodes across, like an airport, wherever you're working, and I think you could add value in safety and machine-to-machine instant messaging all without the internet at all, right?
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that I'm going to have two devices, right? Take this one and this one. And they probably will have totally different internet connections, even though I'm holding them in two hands. For me, as a user, I own these devices, and they belong to my mesh. I don't care if they have 2, 3, 4 different connections to the net. That's abstract. I want connectivity, and I want to have control. Like Tim wants control over his fridge, and I don't want to hear anything from Randy's fridge. I want to go down there and empty it together with him. But I think we have to lift ourselves above the home router, because the home router is not the only gateway anymore. And our users will see it that way, that all these devices are connected, right? And they don't care about how they're connected, or that this little stupid thing is right now connected to a German internet provider. That don't care.
I do want to challenge the fact that like everything is all the time connected to the internet as like a risk, because
all the networks are internet. Not everything is connected all the time.
Yeah, no, but like I hear a lot of people that are in microcontroller world saying, okay, with IPv6 I can now be continuously connected to the internet. Well, that's true, but unless you have like a transactional way of upgrading to a new version baked into your device, you're going to have a problem the moment that there's a bug and some virus is going to target all the devices in the world that you connected with IPv6. So I assume there's still going to be
IPv6 and IPv4 here.
Well, the difference is that like you used to not have enough IP addresses to actually make physically that device available. If you would have IPv6, any device in your home could, in theory, be directly connected to the internet and accessible.
Like, and that isn't going to happen.
There's no real difference between IPv4 and IPv6 here.
Well, assuming that you've got some sort of firewall somewhere, they're functionally equivalent.
You have a firewall, and you have the same firewall on IPv6.
Right.
No, but and what I'm saying is that like I think the people that think connecting everything directly to the internet might not see the dangers. I think there is room for gateway devices that like block the big bad internet from the light switch.
If you look for the consumer market, we're way beyond that. Consumers are connecting everything to the internet because they want to. That's the service layer, and we just have to find new ways of thinking. As long as you're thinking inside and outside, or if you try to think a secure network, then you're dead. Network behind a gateway is not secure.
There's a purpose for gateways, and it's really only for effectively rate adaptation, or the ability to translate from one radio protocol to another. One thing we haven't talked about is the Internet of Things has got this plethora of little radio protocols, most of which are absolutely terrible, and that aren't IP compatible, and those things are really, scarily open, most of them. And they're squeezed into tiny amounts of spectrum, which our masters at the MVNOs have allowed, and the spectrum regulators have allowed us to have. And I mean, my friends who spend more time in this world than I do are regularly now finding that they can't get enough bandwidth to run, their little Zigbees between here and there, because there's too many other damn Zigbees in the space, or not Zigbees, but other people using the same spectrum but with an incompatible protocol. So I think there's a huge problem there, and I think there is a role for gateways in terms of adapting from one protocol and one radio to another. But in terms of inside and out, you're absolutely right, Ola. The only border is the edge of the device. If once you've got into the device, you have to protect. That is the border to protect. It's the case it comes in, and anything else is illusory at best.
Yeah, I mean, we have to figure out how to build user-controlled and user-understood managed realms on top of that, connecting their devices in a trustworthy way. Because if we're not doing that, the shit is gonna hit the fan, and we're gonna end up in tabloids.
Yeah, we have to move. We have to move well away from packet level security. Any kind of network transport, anything in that realm is something that's got to change, because bottom line.
And well away from the API system.
Yeah, to everybody's point, I mean, fact of the matter is, what isn't connected or what isn't going to be, even air gap. Okay, your air gap security is a joke now. I mean, because you find all these other entry points through USB thumb drives, you name it. I mean, it's obviously that doesn't even work. The next realm is really, I mean, we talk about context in a lot of different ways, but you know, at some point, from a device level perspective, and I don't care if that device is a gateway, a firewall, or a Bluetooth connected light bulb in your house. At some level, there's got to be some level of intelligence from a behavioral standpoint, that it knows that this is generally how I communicate, this is generally how I act, and anything outside of this is not normal. Okay, and something has to happen. I've got to flag, I've got to disconnect, I've got to do something to stop this from propagating. That's kind of the next realm when it comes to the security standpoint, and that's really the whole deep learning systems that are being developed, a lot of these stacked neural networks, and the idea that at some point you're going to be able to push this stuff down to device level. The intelligence at the edge, not at some centralized point vis-a-vis a firewall, a virus detection system, whatever, but literally each and every device's ability to understand what's right, what's wrong, what's contextually accurate at any given point in interaction with it.
Yep, and that was how... Oh, go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to say, I've been playing with some very small experiments with those ideas with this Yopet thing. I don't know if any of you kind of still remember this, but the how do you talk to your parrot? How do you give them a video camera that is safe and secure, that they can't answer, they can't reject calls, they can't log in, how do you do that in a sensible way? And that's been a really nice way to play with this, and think from the human point of view, what I discovered was that there's a huge power in an intentional gesture by a human physically showing something to something, putting something on something, in some way making a gesture that says, yeah, this is what I expect to happen, or this is mine, or making that gestural intention. And then from then on, I expect the device to remember it, and I expect the behavior to be sensible, and as you say, maybe there's some learning to be done about knowing what sensible is. But it has to start from a human standpoint, certainly for domestic IoT, about, yeah, this is mine, I've claimed it, and then we go out from that point.
And that's exactly the kind of how we started, how conceived Skynet from the beginning, that everything had a UUID and a token, and that's how it authenticates with whatever mesh network it's trying to talk to. You as a human also have a UUID and a token that when you log into the platform, you're now one with the machines, and you can claim devices. So you can say, that's my parrot, or that's my talking pet device, and I'm going to claim it so that now I have control to do things with it. And then we came up with this concept of whitelisting and blacklisting arrays around roles on UUIDs. So you can say which UUIDs are allowed or not allowed to either discover this particular UUID, or subscribe to, or send message to, or configure. So there's this whole concept of everything potentially could have. You could set the levels of of communications with UUIDs, and we abstract the communications layer from all of that. So if this UUID connects, it says, okay, that one's connecting via MQTT, so Octoblu knows how to route a CoAP message to an MQTT device just by simply saying this UUID wants to send a message to that UUID, and do they have the right permissions to do so?
I want to ask Tim, aren't you worried about a cat in the middle attack for your parents?
No. The security is too strong for that. Unless the cat happens to have the right QR code tattooed on it, we're safe.
Okay. Martin, thanks for joining us. I know you have to drop, and you are welcome anytime. Hopefully James has already told you that. So anytime you want to come by and join the panel, there's generally going to be some space for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Martin, where are you based these days?
In London.
Okay. Yes. Right. We must do something at some point.
Yep. No, come to our offices. No problem.
Cool.
Chris, you guys know how to reach each other, or do I need to email everybody? How's that going to work?
Yeah.
I'm sure
Martin just sent me a LinkedIn thing, so yeah, we're good.
Okay, great, excellent. Okay, thanks everybody. Well, we're on the 1 hour mark. That doesn't mean we have to stop. We have such a good panel here, but I would like to ask if anybody on ZipDX has any comments or questions, because you can do a *6 to unmute yourself. Actually, it doesn't unmute. It toggles the mute state, but since you're all muted, that would have the same effect. And other than that, let's see. Any other unanswered questions from anybody anywhere? I'm looking over at IRC. I don't see anything. We were talking to Matthew from Matrix. We're trying to work out a way where more people can get on IRC that don't like IRC, because that's a little bit of a problem. Especially the guests, although today I think everybody's on.
I'm not.
And Ole, you were able to join us only because we're an hour early. Is that the deal? So we have something to thank daylight saving time for?
That's one of the reasons. The other is my wife is working late, so.
Ah, okay. That's always.
Extra hours. I have one question though.
Sure.
I mean, Matt, you were showing your phone saying UID, and we have a lot of applications now using my cell phone number as the UID. It's quite kind of funny with stuff like Telegram, because I have Telegram on a lot of devices, and I accidentally removed it from the phone that had a phone number, but my phone number is still my UID. Will we be able to leave the UID and do something else? Leave the phone number, the cell phone number, that too many applications use. I showed earlier this little thingy. Let's see if I can focus it again. This is a YubiKey from Yubico with NFC. It's actually an authentication key that I carry, and I have friends that use it with their Nexus 5 and Nexus 7s to PGP sign email and identify with the key. They just touch the Nexus in the back and everything is all set. That's one way, hardware tokens, but I still don't know.
Well, it plugs in as USB and has NFC. Is that it?
It can do many things. Either USB,
okay,
and it works as a keyboard with a one. When you press the little button, you get a key string for authentication, a one-way key. But it also has NFC, and I think that's the roadmap for the future. But Google used these kind of devices for two-factor authentication now for Google Plus and Google services.
Right. Exactly. No, but I didn't realize that I know they made those with for USB, but I did not realize it had an NFC. What were you going to say, Tim?
I think it's interesting, the identity. You know, how do you prove to a machine who you are? That's, you know. I have friends.
In my case, bad typing.
Well, yes, I mean that may be it. And James used to employ somebody who had chips inserted in his fingers, in his, you know, whatever that's called, that bit of his hand, so he could open doors just by doing Vulcan mind grips at them. And you know, so and I know somebody else who's very interested in the ring as a identity, and I think personally that one I like the idea of having like the ducal signet ring as being the thing that proves that I am me. You know,
I think Eric has an NFC ring, but he's not here.
It's not. NFC ring is slightly too public. It doesn't have the right cryptographic properties for me, but it's interesting nonetheless.
Yep. You should look at the YubiKey Neo. I'll see if I can get one for you.
Can I have it as a piercing?
Yeah. The interesting thing is also that some people build solutions where I can have one identity. I'm actually a lot of different people, as you've seen with all my hats. A new person every Friday. So we need to build solutions where people can have multiple identities and switch between them. I think that's
the persona part of identity is a big thing that needs to be dealt with. It's not, and again, here we're getting back to context, right? It comes down to what are you doing at what period of time. So what persona are you right now? I'm in the middle of work. No, I'm out watching I'm coaching my son's soccer game, so my persona is something different then. So that kind of contextual intelligence is like paramount for getting to the point of understanding how I apply security, communication, all the rest of the elements that go into who I am at that moment. That kind of adaptive intelligence is going to be key to what happens in the future.
Oh, yeah.
Jerry,
Yeah, just look at the difference between Gmail and Google Apps.
Yep, I was going to say, Jerry, I completely agree with you with that. So what we chose from day one was that me as Chris, when I log into Octoblu, I get one UUID. Whether I'm using this for my home automation or if I'm at work, and contextually, the platform needs to understand maybe my geolocation or where I'm at, maybe iBeacons by proximity. When I walk into my office, I want all my desktops, everything to, maybe my Citrix receiver to start for me, lights to go on, follow me around, and as my car is coming into the driveway, it knows start doing some home automation things. I've just crossed the geo fence, but it's still me, right? Context is everything.
Well, talk to Hillary Clinton. That's not true anymore. You actually need to keep these things more separate than that, Chris.
You're right.
Yeah, but we also need to be able to leave personas behind to renew ourselves when we change roles or we just want to get rid of some part of the digital history.
Well, or I mean, even if
I want to be in control not only of my fridge, but also my personas.
And I think it's not even that simple, unfortunately, because if you're running a company, you want to be able to give a role to somebody. So the person who's currently operating this machine is in that role. But when you fire them and you take somebody else on in that role, you don't necessarily want that to be a completely fresh slate. It's quite complicated, all this.
Well, we handle this through whitelists. So our belief is that you own your UUID as a human in this world of machines and systems, and when you come on to a company or change roles in a company or leave a company, your whitelists or blacklists get changed on what you can or cannot access any longer. But it's still you. Your home automation should still work the same.
We should. I keep meaning, Chris, to spend some time talking to you, and it just doesn't happen because we're both busy in time zones and stuff. But we really should do this somewhere because I think there's a lot of common ground we should be covering.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of common ground.
But we have to find simple solutions because re-signing stuff, people have been disappearing into that technology. I worked a bit with electronic signatures before I started working with Asterisk, and the killer question was an insurance company with life insurance saying, well, we want electronic documents, electronic signatures, but they have to last 125 years. Yeah. So,
well,
I mean, I stress the point that we have to find solutions that are interoperable, but still solutions that people can understand. Normal users that wants to connect their things.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, Tim is on to something with his parrot. Go look at that.
So the way we look at it too is that your UUID, Octoblu knows that you're a human, right? You've logged in. That's your UUID. You're the owner. You've claimed all these devices. You own all these devices. So I forgot what I was going to say about you. Oh, so when a machine wants to send you a message, it says, oh, well, Chris doesn't speak MQTT or CoAP. He speaks either email or text or push notifications or whatever facets I have coming in. So I think it's an interesting way to let you directly communicate with devices and devices directly connect with you and our systems. I think the day of traditional old IT, where all they do is have programmers connecting APIs together, I mean, we're trying to solve that with the drag and drop designer too. So
yeah,
I love these sides.
Message least cost routing. There you go.
Yep. And this world of sensors, and so and the conversations we had earlier about machine learning, I think as big data systems start analyzing all this data looking for trends, if the machine knows, or if the system knows that there's a motor it's watching heat on, temperature on, and if it knows there's a fan in the room, why not have Splunk tell Octoblu to send a message to the human's UUID, say, is it okay for me to turn the fan on? Maybe after a few times of you answering yes, or maybe if you said no, it has to understand what's unique about this time you said no and all the rest of the times you said yes, so that kind of like the Nest learns. I think that all of these IoT platforms will be learning in the very near future too.
Well, that's the trick.
Getting back. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trick. They have to be learning and start suggesting actions. But the thing is, there's a fine line between that and the need for privacy. Do I want to know about sex toys and suggest that, oh, you seem frustrated today, why don't you charge your sex toys and play with them? I mean, some of the things shouldn't be in the cloud, right? There is a need for privacy. By the way, I need to connect some things here.
I wanted to, Tim, you'll have the word next. I just wanted to come back on something that you mentioned earlier. Because, for example, when we were out of the house for, say, 3 days, and my wife said, oh, she was all proud of herself. She said, I turned the heat off. Well, when I got back, the heat is normally on to about 19 degrees, let's say. When I got back to the house, it was 16 degrees. And my question is, and this you'd have to do some kind of a hysteresis deviation calculation, but is it better to have the heat off completely or on a lower temperature? In other words, once you let the house get down to a low temperature, bringing this back to your thing, the fridge gets down to a very low temp, goes up to a too high temperature, and isn't it better to maintain some medium? I mean, so you need computers to figure that stuff out. But in the end, I mean, I'm not sure there's a real net gain in all this, particularly in your example. But anyway, go ahead with whatever you wanted to say.
Yeah, so I think there is a net gain. I think there's a net gain because peaks are expensive to produce. There isn't a net gain for you directly, but there's a net gain for the producer because in order to fire up that last 2% on the grid, they have to fire up some piece of asset that they normally don't use, and it costs them 20% to start it up, and so there's that whole peak shaving is an enormous potential win, in my view. Now, I haven't crunch the numbers, it might not be big enough, but that's my thing with that. We were talking about learning platforms, and I'm terrified about that. There was a really good article about somebody who has got rid of their Nest because it basically went AWOL. It learnt stuff that was irrelevant and started being dictatorial, and she threw it out and replaced it with a conventional thermostat because they'd lost control over the heating in their house. Yeah. And the discussion was really funny because it's talking about this. Initially, people would come in and they'd show off how cool the Nest was, and then after a while, they started apologizing for the fact that people had to keep their coats on, and this was like okay, there was probably something wrong with it and whatever, but I think it's interesting that it can learn a lot of these learning algorithms. I mean, if you look at the ads that Facebook show me, they are absolutely uniformly terrible. All right. So the idea that these learning algorithms are going to save our bacon and make IoT pleasant that hasn't been the experience for advertising so far, and I worry a lot about the idea that anything could predict accurately how I want this house to be. I much rather it did what it was told than started trying to second guess me.
I stayed with some people who the guy would wake up in the morning and turn the thermostat all the way up so that the heat would go on. And I turned it like on 90 Fahrenheit so that the heat would go on. Then when he was warm, he'd turn it off. And, you know, it was all I could do to not say, you know, that's a thermostat, so you're kind of completely defeating the purpose of it, right? And the thermostat didn't learn anything, but at least it could have kept a stable temperature. These days, of course, I mean, we have a thermostat that allows you to program night and day, and I think that's probably pretty universal. So, you know, we do use less energy at night, but the point is that the average person either doesn't care or doesn't understand, and either way, we're in trouble with that. So unless people want to go ahead and accept these learning algorithms and accept the Nest as some kind of a blessing, which I don't see it as personally, I think maybe the Nest idea goes too far, and this learning thing is invalid. The energy saving and the money saving thing, certainly the ecological implications, that's fantastic. Yeah, I agree. I mean, if we could do that and reduce all these problems of pollution and everything else associated, that's fantastic. And if we can save a couple pennies, that's great too. But the learning about, you know, because it's a machine, for God's sake, you know. I mean, what is it going to learn? It's going to learn that you do this normally, but it has no idea. Yeah, well, he drank a lot last night, so, you know, these people partied and they need a little more heat in the morning. I mean, it's not going to learn that unless all the devices are detecting the alcohol in your blood and deciding that you could use a little more cold or heat. I don't know. Where are we going with this?
I think a lot of these devices are coming out either for convenience, you know, so they're trying, you know, the ultimate goals, you know, for like home automation people, enthusiasts, they just want either their homes to start saving more money or be more efficient or be more interesting, like maybe my lights turn on and off, you know, based on what room I'm in, or, you know, kind of follow me around or improve security, etc. So I think, you know, data in the wrong hands, to Tim's point earlier, I think is terrifying. And I think we need to find a way, you know, to either have more control on these devices ourselves or not rely on a single vendor to start connecting all the dots for us.
You mentioned, I think it was you who mentioned, Chris, the Samsung television sending the data back, right? And you know that when you do searches, if any of you use Google, probably Siri does the same anyway, all of these vocal things where you talk to I talk to my watch sometimes, you know, hey, what temperature is it in Paris or something. And those things are all recorded. So you can go look at them and you can delete them, but they are recorded. Whether there's a nefarious use of that, I mean, you know, I don't think so. And I think the Samsung story, by the way, was kind of a FUD thing. I don't think anybody cares or was looking at it, and it has to do only with vocal commands. It is not listening all the time. The Amazon device, what's that called? The Echo? Or whatever, whatever the name of that is. That thing is listening all the time, and it is sending the stuff up all the time. Is it encrypted? Is it saved? We don't know. That thing hears everything that goes on in your house.
My understanding is that Echo, because we were playing with one the other day, it listens for its name Alexa, right? So I think it's a passive, I could be wrong, but I think it's a passive speech reco device, kind of like your Google Watch, where you say, okay, Google, and then that wakes it up, and then what you say afterwards streams up.
Okay, Google, what is the temperature in Paris? No. It just said something. It didn't get it, in fact. Never mind. Anyway, yeah, that's the. But those are all recorded apparently, and you can go look at them. I haven't yet, but I probably should. Yeah. And of course, you got the false triggers too. So the Alexa might hear you. You might say anorexia, and it starts recording. You know, I don't know.
Yep. So we attached an Amazon Echo to Octoblu, and we were having some fun with it, where you can say, you know, Alexa, turn my lights on, you know, and it would know what to do. But we're adding the WIT AI to the platform next week, So I think that'll get really interesting, doing some semantics around speech recognition for whatever you want to do, whether it be, as you're driving your car, having interesting conversation. Could be like in a warehouse, where you've got your hands occupied on various, productions or driving trains or whatever, being able to have another input angle. Tim looks like he has something to say.
Yeah, no, I'm just really glad you've changed the name from Skynet now that you're adding AI to it.
Well, what's funny is that all the code still says Skynet. When you hear that the team still thinks they're building Skynet. So.
Oh my God.
Right.
Only the name
All
has
right, so
changed.
You always need a killer app, so I'm going to let you in on one. I give this idea away. The killer app is the connected vibrator. What else do I have to say?
So Hermione is also publicizing that. She has a
Yeah, that's a
Vibraze.
I mean,
Breeze.
the scale that tweets is of no interest. The connected vibrator, on the other hand, could be a big thing.
Yeah, no, there is one.
I'm not surprised.
This talk of learning devices and Samsung TVs reminds me of a story I read in an Australian newspaper some years ago about a TiVo that started believing its owner was gay. Do you remember that one? The guy had recorded a couple of episodes of Will and Grace, and so the TiVo started to think he was homosexual and started recording all sorts of other programs for him. And in an attempt to convince the TiVo that he was not, he recorded a couple of war movies, and then it started recording neo-Nazi material for him. It's a true story.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But Facebook's like that anyway. I mean, I get Facebook ads for gay Swedish dads because I have Swedish friends and gay friends, and I'm a dad, so obviously I want to join the gay Swedish dad club. Clearly.
I'm really sorry for letting your address out.
Just a friend from
Okay, that explains it.
Yeah, but they paid well. They paid well.
Sounds like we have. That's Michael on ZipDX, I think.
I dropped into an obtuse context in conversation.
Yeah, really. You got into just the right place.
Yeah, one thing we've got to consider is what happens when all of these things go wrong, because undoubtedly if they're machine-based, they're going to go wrong. So we've always got to think about what damage can you do when it goes horribly wrong. And a good example of what happens when it goes horribly wrong was Evan McGee's dangerous demo at Astricon, if you remember that, David. And what he did is he built a bot that listened through a Bluetooth light bulb to the conversation in the room. And the idea was that if you started to get a bit fruity and say the wrong words, it would start flashing the light at you to remind you to be a good boy and to freshen your language. But it didn't quite work that way, and so poor old Evan ended up swearing and beating up this light in front of an audience, which then did precisely nothing. And it's on the video of that is up on YouTube, I think, on the Astricon on the Astricon channel. Absolutely brilliant.
Probably is. Of course, there are other Astricon chats that include bad language without any light bulbs as well.
Yeah, but for Evan to do it, because he's normally the most mild-mannered, polite gentleman going, wearing his bow tie, was particularly interesting. Anyway, so my point is we've got to consider what damage you can do when it all goes horribly wrong.
Well, here's something that could go horribly wrong or horribly right when we're looking at
that's
the
Hermione.
famous. Yeah, there it is.
That's our friend Hermione. She's a bad.
So let me see. How many of these should we order? They're only $99. Would you like the pink or the purple? Go for the purple. I like purple better. Complete shipping information below.
And you link it with Bluetooth Low Energy.
Come on, read out the testimonials.
Why low energy though? Why low energy? That to me that doesn't.
I'm beginning to regret having done this. It's amazing. I sent you a really, really pretty URL of a grid of like the geekiest thing ever, and you all ignore it. And now I mentioned vibrators, and you're off like a shot. Yeah, it's just like I know it's Friday afternoon, but honestly, I'm disappointed in you all. So go and, as an antidote, go and look at this grid thing.
Gridwatch.
Yeah, go look at that. It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. No, just
Gridwatch.templar. Okay, I can put it on because it's a long URL to read.
Yeah, but what does it show you? It's absolutely gorgeous. I can't describe it properly. Oh,
here it is. Present to everyone. Here it is. This is your UK national grid status.
So that is the current state of the UK national grid at this instant. So we're importing how much power from the French? Yes, about a lot actually. It's nearly off scale. And so I love this page. I think it's great. They have a German one and a French one. It's knee deep in geopolitics.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it does actually.
Where do you see the French? Where do you see the French import? I don't.
So there's. You see, there's a. On the right-hand side, in the smaller dials, there's French ICT.
Oh wow! Well, Dutch too is off the scale. In fact, Dutch is pinned.
Yeah.
So is hydro.
That's quite small. The French one is 2 gigawatt, and that's. That so that we get as much energy from the French as we do from wind power, and the Dutch one is 1 gigawatt, and that's rammed up against the end point. And there's this funny thing in geopolitics where we buy that Dutch stuff we actually sell to the Irish, pretty much. And so this is kind of
a healthy markup, I hope.
Undoubtedly. And there you go. You see, we're still burning a lot of coal.
Thank goodness for that.
Well, yes, but I think it's a thing of beauty. And then there's a French one and a German one as well somewhere. But I love I don't know how he's got away with the Smith's Instrument limited label on that. That's got to be copyright. But anyway.
I'm trying to get these little small ones. Here we go. Okay, this is a little bit more visible. So yeah, Dutch ICT.
And CCGT must be what gas turbine.
Yes. But there's two sorts of gas. There's one which is very quick. No, where is it? There's one. Oh yes, that OCGT. That's oh God, we've got the Queen's speech is over. Everyone's turned the kettle on. The one on the top right. The one in the top right is very expensive.
Zero right now.
Yeah, it's zero because there is no national emergency.
It's only when
So it's a fascinating little geeky thing, almost as interesting as Hermione's vibrators.
Not quite, but very interesting nonetheless. Very interesting. But the vibrators, I didn't take the time to read. So the connection is what? We know what the endpoint. We know what the endpoint does. What is there, a controller or something?
Yeah. It's
You do this at a distance, in other words,
yes, it's for distant relationships. So
I had an idea for I had an idea for gaming that I cannot reveal in public, but when we're in the mature audiences, maybe I can tell you about it. Let's get this back to only because I don't want it stolen, of course. Okay. No, not really. Okay, well, I guess we can maybe close. Anybody on ZipDX have anything to say? *6 to toggle your mute state. Anybody else on the Hangout? If there's any conclusion. Oh, Michael's with us again.
Hey, Michael.
Hello.
Did I miss the bit where Chris, you described what the status of Octoblu is? Is it open source or is it commercial now? I kind of missed that bit.
Yeah, I didn't quite finish the story, but it's probably 80% of Octoblu is open source. It's mostly MIT licensed, so you can build commercial applications on top of it. It's a mesh network, private, public, hybrid clouds. You can run it on a Raspberry Pi all the way up to a horizontally scaled cloud platform. We've got gateways, microcontroller operating systems. The part that's closed is the web app itself, much like the GitHub kind of model where all the infrastructure is open, but then GitHub.com is closed. That's kind of how Octoblu is. What we think we're landing on two models for monetization. One is licensing. So if Twelephone would like to run their own Octoblu IoT cloud, you could private label it or run it in your own data centers. The other one is around the idea of a compute engine. So much like Heroku has dynos and Amazon has machines you can spin up. What you deploy in the Docker containers that we run for you 24/7 is essentially a compute engine, and we'll probably charge for different size compute engines by the hour. But right now it's all free. There's over 1,500 users on the platform today in a private beta, and building a lot of really cool things. And they range from home automation people to enterprise automation, as well as we've got a few doing industrial, like power control stations and construction, etc. So a lot of interesting things, and it's all free until we actually figure out what the price points and monetization actually is going to end up.
Well, we can't ask any more than that, can we? So everybody sign up and get building things now before the commercial police come swooping in.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll grandfather pretty much everyone on the platform with all your flows, what you're doing. So yeah, now's the time to get in there and play.
Yeah, as if we didn't have a gazillion other things to do as well at the moment. But thanks for that. Yeah. Adding another thing on my list of things to do.
Chris, where are you going to be next? You doing any presentations or anything you'd like to announce? Any dates you could give us, or places or times, or?
We're going to have some folks in South by Southwest next week. They're going to be Intel's flying him in to do some party things at a pub, I think, or something. A lot of lights connected to Octoblu. We've got a really big conference that Citrix does in May called Synergy. Mm-hmm. I can't remember, like 10,000, 20,000. I can't remember the size of the conference, but we'll be all over that thing with Teslas connected to Octoblu, with drones, with a bunch of really cool ideas we're planning out. And I think we've got an events page, but we haven't quite gotten through. It's github.com/octoblu/events is kind of what's on our radar, but those are the big ones.
Okay. So yeah, this event that you just mentioned, the Citrix one, sounds a little like that science fiction novel Demon. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Novel.
Yeah, the fellow. Yeah, well, it's Skynet, right? The guy dies, and he's got all these millions of operators. There's both the heads-up display, but the other thing that reminded me of what you just said is that you got all these drones and machines and motorcycles with blades or convey.
You could totally do that with Octoblu. So we have an RSS feed. So in his book, he had an obituary that triggered the whole series of mayhem.
Yeah, we're almost there. Okay, anybody else have any final comments before I launch the thank yous and so on for the sponsors? Going once, going twice, going three times.
Well.
Hey, Ole, great to see you, and great to see everybody, particularly you, Chris. You need to come back a little bit more often if you can. We love to have you each time.
Thank you so much, Randy. It was I love that photo. It's so great to see everybody.
It is. Let me put that back up for everybody. Let's go out on that. It's Chris Mathieu, VUC 532.
Awesome.
Hey, that was the bleeding edge of the IP communications and VoIP community. We're at vuc.me on the web. Thanks to Simwood.com, who can turn you as a developer into a telco. Our hosted PBX is provided by onsip.com. The site at vuc.me is on bluehost.com. We use zipdx.com for our wideband, full-featured conference bridge. And our local rate dial-ins are from voxbone.com. Every Friday, 12 noon Eastern Time. See you next week.
Look to the skies. Keep watching the skies.